Hey everyone, you ever feel like finding good leads is like searching for a needle in a haystack? It's rough out there, especially with how much ads cost these days.
It really is. Traditional advertising can be so expensive, and it doesn't always pan out.
Exactly. So I was doing some research, just looking for better ways to find leads. And I came across this software. It's a verified lead scraper tool.
Interesting.
Yeah. It basically says it can pull leads from all these different platforms like Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. But here's the thing. It says it focuses on verified accounts. That's what really got my attention.
Yeah. Most of these lead scraper tools just grab whatever they can find, right? Doesn't always mean they're good leads.
Right. Exactly. And that's what's so interesting about this one. They're saying you can actually ditch those expensive ad campaigns and just use this tool,
Wow, that's a bold claim. Would definitely shake things up in the marketing world if it's true.
wouldn't it? Imagine. No more pouring money into ads that might not even work. But before we get too excited, let's break it down a bit. How does this thing actually work?
Yeah, good point. The source material mentioned something about targeting leads based on your niche. Did you see that?
Yeah. So it sounds like they use keywords and filters or something to find accounts that match your target audience.
Makes sense. Kind of like targeted ads, but without having to pay the platform to show your stuff.
Exactly. Which brings us to another big promise. Cost savings. They're saying you can save a ton of money because you won't need to pay for ads. What do you think? Is that realistic?
Yeah, you can definitely generate leads without only using ads. I mean, think about organic outreach, content marketing, networking, all that stuff.
Right, right.
But to say you can completely replace paid advertising with just this one tool, I don't know, that feels a little too good to be true.
Yeah, I get that. It's probably not like a magic solution, but even if it could cut down on how much we rely on ads, that would be huge, especially for smaller businesses.
Absolutely. Anything that can help level the playing field is worth looking into. But we got to be careful not to just get caught up in the hype. We need to dig deeper and see if this tool really does what it says.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. They talk a lot about verified leads, like they really emphasize that. But what does that even mean here? Are we talking about accounts that, the social media platform itself has verified, or is it something else?
That's the question, isn't it? The source material doesn't really explain it.
Interesting.
It would be great if they said how they're verifying these leads. Like, are they checking against some outside database? Are they using a verification service? We need more information.
Yeah, that's kind of a red flag, isn't it? If they're going to make a big deal about verified leads, they should be upfront about what that means.
For sure, transparency is super important when you're talking about data collection and using people's information.
Absolutely. And speaking of being transparent, the language they use in their sales pitch is pretty
Hmm.
intense. Yeah, they throw around a lot of those urgency tactics, like limited time offer or those countdown timers.
Ugh.
It gives you that buy now or miss out feeling.
Classic marketing tactic, unfortunately. Creating that sense of scarcity can really push people to make a decision without thinking it through.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put the hype aside for a minute and focus on what they say the benefits are. They claim this tool can save you time and money, help you build trust with those verified leads, and ultimately lead to faster business growth. So let's break those down, starting with the time and money thing. Do you think that's realistic?
It could be, but it really depends.
On what?
Well, if this tool actually automates a good chunk of your lead generation process, then yeah, you could save a lot of time.
Okay, so more time to focus on other things.
Yeah, exactly. And saving time usually means saving money too, but
Always a but.
right. You got to remember the tool itself costs something, right? So you need to see if that cost is less than what you'd spend on ads. And even if you're not spending money on ads, you'll still need to put in effort to connect with those leads, turn them into actual customers.
Right, it's not just going to do everything for you.
Nope, not a set it and forget it solution. And then there's the question of if the time you save is even worth it. I mean, what if the tool gives you a bunch of bad leads that don't go anywhere? Then you've wasted time and money.
Yeah, makes sense. It's about quality, not just how many leads you get.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about building trust with verified leads? Do you think there's anything to that?
It's an interesting point, but remember, trust isn't something you can just automate, you
Yeah.
know? You have to earn it.
So it's more about how you interact with those leads, building a relationship?
Exactly. It's about how you reach out, what you offer them, how you show them you're credible and know what you're doing.
Okay, so the tool might give you a head start with potentially better leads, but the rest is up to you. Gotcha. What about their claim that this can lead to faster business growth. That seems like a pretty big promise.
It is, and that's the hardest one to really judge because so many things affect business growth, right?
Like what?
Well, you need a good product or service to begin with, right? You need a strong brand, a clear marketing plan, and you got to be able to turn those leads into paying customers. And don't forget about keeping your current customers happy. Growth isn't just about getting new people, it's about holding on to the ones you have.
That's true. I never thought about it like that.
It's all connected.
Okay, so the benefits they're talking about, they sound good,
Yeah.
but we need to be realistic, right?
Definitely.
Now, who are they saying can benefit from this tool?
Mhm.
The list is pretty long. I mean, they mentioned everyone: digital marketing agencies, coaches, real estate agents, online stores, even schools. It's like they're trying to reach every business out there.
Yeah, it is a very broad target audience. Sometimes that can be a sign that they don't really understand the specific needs of each industry.
Hmm, that's a good point.
I mean, sure, some basic lead generation principles are the same across the board, but there are always differences depending on what you do.
Right, right. So who do you think would actually benefit from this? Assuming it works the way they say it does.
I think the businesses that really rely on reaching out to get leads and who are already comfortable using digital marketing tools, they could see some benefit.
Like who?
Digital marketing agencies, maybe,
Yeah.
or businesses that offer services to other
What
businesses.
about freelancers?
hmm
Or like consultants, the people who are always looking for new clients?
Yeah, they could potentially benefit too. But even for them, it's important to weigh the pros and cons, Is it worth the cost and the risk?
Speaking of risk, what about the ethical side of all this? Like, is lead scraping even legal?
It depends, actually. The laws are different everywhere, and it also depends on how they're scraping the data. It's really important to understand the rules around data privacy and getting people's consent, especially when you're taking data from these big platforms. Some of them have really strict rules against scraping, and you can get in trouble if you break those rules.
So it's not just about if the tool works, it's about if using it is even okay to do in the first place.
Exactly. You got to make sure you're following the law and being ethical.
Okay, one last thing.
Yeah.
They offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, which seems pretty standard.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about them and how confident they are in this tool?
Well, it could mean they're confident, but it could also just be a marketing tactic, make people feel like there's no risk in trying it out.
Makes sense.
The important thing is to read the fine print. Some companies make it really hard to actually get your money back.
Always read the fine print.
Yeah.
Good advice. So we've got this tool. It makes big promises, uses some pretty strong language to sell itself, and it's targeting basically everyone. But are those promises realistic? Is this thing really a game changer?
Good question.
Let's keep digging into that as we continue our deep dive into this verified lead scraper tool.
We were talking about the data this tool scrapes.
Yeah.
It's all well and good to say verified leads,
Yeah.
but what does that actually look like? What kind of information are we talking about here?
Right. Like how much detail do we get? Is it just names and emails or is there more to it?
That's where it gets kind of vague, They mention targeting by niche, but they don't say exactly how they figured that out.
So someone could just have like fitness in their bio
Yeah.
and suddenly they're a lead for every fitness coach out there.
That's a possibility, yeah. Which makes you wonder how accurate these leads really are. Just because someone mentions a keyword doesn't mean they're actually interested.
And wouldn't that just give you a ton of useless contacts?
Yeah.
Seems like you'd be wasting a lot of time trying to figure out who's actually a good lead.
Exactly. It kind of defeats the purpose of saving time if you have to go through and clean up the whole list yourself.
Plus, think about the people whose info is being scraped. It's got to be annoying getting bombarded with messages from businesses that just grabbed your info because you mentioned something vaguely related to their industry.
It's not a good look, that's for sure. It could even make people less willing to share their information online, which would just make lead generation even harder for everyone.
It's like a vicious cycle, right? Businesses get desperate for leads, they turn to scraping, which makes people more cautious, and then it's even tougher to find good leads.
Exactly. It really shows why we need to find better ways to do this, ways that are ethical and actually build relationships instead of just grabbing data.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and think bigger picture. Let's say this tool really does work exactly like they say. It gives you tons of verified leads that perfectly match your niche, all for a low price. What would that mean for marketing as a whole?
That's an interesting question. If a tool like that existed and everyone started using it, it would definitely change things. Well, it could make it easier for smaller businesses and startups to compete with bigger companies, because everyone would have access to the same quality of leads.
So it could level the playing field. That sounds good.
It could be, yeah. But there are also some potential downsides.
Like what?
Well, imagine if everyone has this tool. Suddenly, everyone's reaching out to the same people.
It's like if everyone's special, no one is.
Exactly. Plus, think about what could happen if this tool got into the wrong hands. It could be used for spamming, or even worse.
Yikes.
It reminds us that technology can be used for good or bad. It's up to us to make sure we're using it responsibly.
It's a lot to think about, that's for sure. So we've talked about the claims, the potential good and bad, the ethics of it all, and even what it could mean for the future of marketing.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah, definitely no easy answers here.
Mm,
This verified lead scraper tool is a tricky one.
absolutely. It seems promising, but there are definitely risks and challenges to consider. People need to be careful, do their research, and really think about the pros and cons before they decide to use something like this.
And maybe beef up their spam filters, just in case.
Yeah.
But seriously, what are your final thoughts for our listeners today? What should they keep in mind as they try to navigate the world of lead generation?
I think the most important thing is to be skeptical. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Always look deeper, ask questions, and really think about the long-term consequences before you jump into anything.
Great advice. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up for today. Big thanks to you for sharing your expertise with us. It's been really helpful. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really appreciate you spending your time with us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. We always say this, but it's true. Do your own research, form your own opinions.
Right. What works for one business might not work for another. There's no magic bullet.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right strategies and tools for you, what fits your goals, your budget, and of course, what you feel good about.
Right. What feels ethical?
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
And even with all this talk about automation and AI, don't forget about the human side of
The
things.
human element.
That's it. Building real relationships with your audience, that should always be at the heart of your marketing.
Could you agree more? Okay, before we go, one last thing to think about. We talked about what could happen if this tool actually does everything it promises.
Right.
But what about the other side of that? What if it falls into the wrong hands? What are the risks we need to be aware of?
That's a big question. We talked about data privacy and how this kind of tool could be misused, but it's a conversation we need to keep having as this technology keeps developing.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fine line between something being innovative and something being, well, exploitative.
Exactly.
We all have a responsibility as consumers and business owners to be informed and to push for responsible use of this kind of technology.
Yeah, we got to think about the bigger picture, how these tools affect not just our businesses, but society as a whole.
Well said. Thank you again for being with us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and that it got you thinking. If you want to learn more, we've got some extra resources in the show notes.
And if you have any thoughts or questions, leave us a comment below. We love hearing from you all.
That's it for today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.